What's going on, golf fans? It's your boy Gsluke with our round 3 live stream for the WM Phoenix Open. Gonna get you ready for all of your exposure. But first off, a breakdown of the weather report. We'll go through DFS and then the prop and the betting side after that to get you ready for all of your moving day exposure. But hopefully everyone is having a fantastic Friday. We got Alan in the chat who's looking forward to some round 3 action. Amen to that. And hopefully everyone out there is having a fantastic time as well. But feel free to let me know any questions or player pool deep dives that you guys have along the way. We're gonna go through the weather report, like I said, ownership, some shots gained metrics in building your player pool, also some value that I've already seen on the prop boards to help get your process started for tomorrow. But without further ado, let's go ahead and get this thing going. We got a question, a deep dive on Tagalo that we'll go through later on. I definitely have you there. And you said, let's have a great round 3. That Neiman birdie on the last saved your ass. Yeah, absolutely. You got to take your blessings where you can. And I'm glad that you're able to do that. It's rare to see sometimes in these betting streets, right? I feel like there's some negativity at times, and not the case with you. So you love to see it. Welcome on in, a Illini fan as well. One of the sweaty tryhards and OGs. Let me know any questions that you guys have for later. But let's start off with a look at the golf course and course conditions, which were a little bit harder in the PM wave today. And the gusts did not die down in the PM wave. They were pretty consistent, I would say, as opposed to the morning where it was calm for the first hour or two. So that's where you saw the advantage. I think it could have really gone either direction if the winds had died down late. But for tomorrow, it actually looks like the exact opposite is going to happen, because when we take a look at the Saturday HRRR, the wind forecast actually gets calmer as the day goes on. So rather than the 0.5 to a 0.7 shot advantage towards the early tee times, it's likely going to be the later guys that get that. But however, because round 2 hasn't ended yet, we're not entirely sure what the tee time situation is going to look like. And because 72 or 73 players are going to be making it to the weekend, it's likely going to be threesomes off of both sides. So if that's the case, then there's not going to be a big weather edge to begin with. But maybe your later starters, that would be the guys that are in first or that just hardly made it through to the weekend, could see a quarter stroke advantage, I'd say, at the very most. So minimal, not really anything that you're incorporating into your process all that much, other than maybe on the prop and the betting side where you can make some small adjustments to any of these kind of categories. But for DFS, playing a little bit more traditional for Saturday, I would say. But let's talk about the ownership next. That's always what we go through second on these live streams, as it's arguably the most important part of your DFS process. Knowing where the rest of the field is going before you start clicking names is a vital part of what you're doing with your research. So we're going to go through the top 10 in the ownership, give you an idea where some of those players are going to be owned. And it's going to be a lot of the 8, 9, 10K players that are in this top 10, but a 7K guy that's sneaking their way in there as well. So these projections, by the way, can be found on my Patreon page via the Golf DFS tier. So if you want to download these with all my projections and pull, make sure to check it out via the link in the description. What's going on, Susu? You're glad PGA is back. You didn't see Hisatuni on top of the board, or didn't see that. Yeah, I didn't foresee it either, but we'll see what happens over the next couple of days. There's a whole lot of golf left, of course. We'll deep dive some Xander. He did just narrowly squeak by to the weekend. You're right, don't bet against Scotty. That's 100% true. I didn't bet against him today, that's for sure. It worked in my favor using him in some lineups. He said on Golf Channel it's 3-ball split tees. Yeah, I thought so. Like 99% chance that that was going to be the case, and that's at least based on what they're saying is going to be the case. It took down the $100 single entry with Rio/Siwoo. There you go. Good stuff. Siwoo Kim, somebody that we talked about a lot yesterday, Rio. I know we had the question about him too, so glad that you took advantage. And you said groups of 3s off of both tees, -4 and -5 players off first. Yeah, whatever the like T35 mark is, or like the T38 mark, those would be the guys that are going off first. And yeah, I got you later on. He said, don't sleep on Jake. Yeah, I won't. The little pun there with the last name. I love Jake Knapp tomorrow, so we'll definitely talk about him. And then, yeah, Nick Taylor, too, will do that as well. But before we get through the deep dives, I do want to go through this top 10 in the ownership. Number 1's a Pearson Cootie, who is a new name up top. He's also an 8K range player, so I would say that's a little bit notable. But because the 8K range had some guys miss the cuts, it's a little bit more condensed there. And he's by far one of the best scorers that you have at that portion. That's why he's getting the extra steam. So he's actually at number 1. Chris Goddard up number 2 in the ownership. Hideki, I only have it about 20%. A lot to do with Scotty taking away ownership from him. And you've got players like Siwoo Kim who had the nuclear rounds, especially gaining about 6 strokes ball striking. People are going to go back there. I don't think that's a mistake per se, but you're going to see people that are getting to some of these ball striking poppers, which is keeping a lot of these other 10K guys in check. So that's why Cootie is slightly edging them out from that department. Scotty, because of his $14,000 price tag, is going to be be kept in check around 20%, even though he went super low as well, which means the real pieces of chalk that we have to worry about on this slate might be the occasional 8K range guy, like a Pearson Coody, a Sahith Thagala. I've also got at close to 20%, but especially these 7K range guys, like a Nikolai Højgaard that we're seeing sneak in here, they're going to be close to 15 to even 20% in some cases. And a Højgaard in single entries might be 20 to 25%. And today that was Sam Stevens, which we called for on yesterday's live stream. We knew that he was going to be getting a lot of extra attention because of the ball striking stats. Højgaard's done that through 2 rounds at this point, so I think it's going to be even more so the case for round 3 showdown. So in the 7K range, when you have players that are 15 to 20%, it means a little bit more from that game theory perspective because we've got guys around them that are 5 to 7.5% owned. So, it's double, sometimes even triple the ownership of some of the other options that you could use instead of him. Whereas up top, your lower owned players are, for example, Xander Schauffele. You don't see on this top 10. Xander's closer to like 12 to 14%, depending on the contest that you're entering. There's not that much leverage to be had. Like the difference between him and then a Chris Gotterup's only about 7 to 8%, depending on the contest, which matters. It's not like you can completely ignore that. That difference in ownership matters, especially if you're trying to take chalk in a few other spots. But it's not going to be nearly as impactful as taking a pivot play towards the bottom end of the board. So like I said, if you want to see the ownership for the entire field for tomorrow, you guys can find that on the Patreon version, as well as with my entire player pool. And the way that I do my player pool is that I write out the rhyme and reason for everyone that I'm using. It gets some of the nasty plays that don't need to be in there out of my process. It also makes me very intentional about the guys that I'm getting to. And up top are the 2 shots gained categories that we're about to deep dive together. And then we've got a few other categories to round it out, not just looking at the round 2 stuff. That would be high upside golfers, guys that make a whole lot of birdies without placement points for round number 2 and 3. That is all of your points. That's where it's all being generated. So I think optimizing on that makes a whole lot of sense. You look at course history, guys that have played well at TPC Scottsdale. Then I mostly use this bottom category for 6K range guys, more of my values, and that would be good overseed putters. And I want to add on top of this, because it's something that I probably should have mentioned maybe for round 2, is the reason why I like some of my value plays with these overseed putters is if you're a 6K range guy, a lot of times those players get to the optimal by spiking for like 4 or 5 strokes putting. Like they're the volatile players with a low floor, high ceiling at times. And their high ceiling rounds normally comes when they're making 100 to 150 feet of putts. So if you want to target some of those spike putting rounds, taking players that are comfortable on the surface of the week is maybe a way to take a shot on the bottom end of the board without just trying to take names out of a hat. So that's how I'm utilizing that. These top 2 categories, a little bit more traditional across the board, players across different price ranges I have with those. And same thing with the ball striking and short game regression candidates towards the top. But every single player that I have down as a yes in my player pool has one of those tags behind it, which even if you're not using the same tags as me, I think you can learn from that to clean up your process, get some of those nasty plays out of there, and just to actually have an idea of why you're getting to who you are. You'd be absolutely shocked how much that improves your process. Let's go through some shots gained metrics before I deep dive anyone that people are curious about in particular. Number 1 in ball striking today was a Siwoo Kim. And by the way, for anyone that's newer to golf, ball striking is just shots gained off the tee plus shots gained approach. These are the most consistent parts of golf from day to day. So that's normally why we rely on these guys a little bit more than their peers. Siwoo Kim, we talked about it on yesterday's stream, ended up losing strokes approach round number 1. Round 2, I mean, I told you it'd be shocking if he did that in back-to-back days, so much so that he gained 5 strokes into the positive. So that combined with the hot putter is how you shoot the round of the day in -9. I wouldn't count on that happening very often from a Siwoo, marrying up a massive ball striking day with the putter. But when he does, you absolutely have to have him. And number 2 and 3 would be a John Perry and Neil Shipley. If you remember yesterday's live stream, Shipley made it towards the top end of the round 1 list as well. So he's another player like a Nikolai Højgaard that's been striping it over both rounds. You've got Hideki Matsuyama, Alex Smalley rounding off the top 5 in the ball striking stats. Some of these guys gained a whole bunch putting today. So they're still solid players compared to a lot of their peers, but the ownership on these guys is going to be pretty inflated for at least the top 5. Rio Hisatuni as well, he gained about 4.5 strokes between the short game categories. But look at a Minwoo Lee in contrast, some of these other top end players. I guess a Neil Shipley would be also kind of like a Minwoo, where he gained ball striking but lost in the short game categories. But Minwoo Lee gained almost 2 strokes off the tee. A stroke on approach is solid for him. And then lost strokes putting, gets still shot -6. this could be the kind of stat profile that is a little bit sneakier than those top 5 players. And I actually think sets up better for round number 3, just because he wasn't getting a whole lot of magic on the greens to drop. And if he can find that Cebu magic, that could be going from -6 to a -8 or even better round like you saw there. And Scotty's on there too. He gained across all 4 categories. Very unsurprising. If you could have asked me like his over/under on score, I would have said -5 or better. So, in hindsight, maybe I should have used 100% of Scotty Scheffler today instead of 50%, but I'm still glad I used him in half of those lineups. Ben Griffin, though, stands out from the ball striking department. Rico Hoey, Austin Eckroat, Tom Kim. And unlike some of those other top-end players, they've got a few other guys here, like a Benny G. Rico Hoey lost strokes putting. That's kind of the regular for him, though. And Austin Eckroat lost about 2.5 strokes in the short game categories. If these guys are a little bit closer to a neutral, or in the case of Ben Griffin, can gain like 1 or 2 strokes putting like he's used to on tour, then that could be a pretty big bounce back for him, too. And it's not like these guys played terribly. Benny G shot -4. Rico Hoey still shot -2, despite losing all of those strokes putting. But if you want to have a nutted performance for round 3 showdown, especially with how calm the weather looks in the afternoon, you're going to have to go super, super low with the moving day setup. That's why I want guys that can spike putt. And if they didn't have their fastball the day before, some of your casuals or people that are newer to golf might look at that as a negative, but it's almost a positive with these guys. The guys that didn't get that much out of their short games, I don't want to say like they have a better chance to do it the next day, but they have about the same kind of chances the guys that went off today, and the public aren't going to treat them like that. And that's why there's an edge to getting to some of those players, because their ownership's going to be lower than the ones that were in the top 5 and had the putting. And you're going to have the same kind of optimal rate with the players that are lower down. So that's why you can find an edge on those guys. And let's take a look at the short game too. If you lost a whole bunch of strokes short game, but you were okay with the ball striking, same thing applies. But you want guys that were at least half decent between the ball striking categories to really qualify here. So Bud Colley would be one of those players. He gained 1.6 strokes ball striking, but lost over 3 strokes on the greens. That was great. Helped me out for a fade that I took on him today, but I completely lucked out with some 3 putts down the stretch. Highly unlikely that he does that in back-to-back days. So, I'll be going back to him in Showdown tomorrow, maybe as a little bit of an apology for betting against him today. But that's one that could make sense. Chris Goddard lost 3 strokes putting. He was also half decent with the ball striking metrics. Max McGreevy, he was another player that was really good on the approach stats round 1. He was actually, I shouldn't even say he was okay. He lost strokes on approach today, which is sub-ideal. But him losing 3 strokes putting is not going to happen in back-to-back rounds very often. So these are bounce-back candidates that you could look at. You could look at to the around the green category as well if you wanted to. You're just not going to find very many examples of that also ended up making the cut. So it's mostly the putting category that's the best for that. And we'll look at the other side of it too, just as maybe a few red flags on players. If you gained a whole bunch of strokes putting, it's going to be hard to repeat that for the next day too. So Michael Kim, Gary Woodlands, Matt McCarty's of the world, Chad Ramey, Zicheng Dow's are players that I'm giving a slight downtick to. And if you're a 6K range player and you had the big spike around the green and putting day the day before, there's next to no chance that I'm using those players in my lineup. So that's how you can use the shots gained metrics to your advantage. But like you saw on the spreadsheet that we went through together before, that was only 2 of the 5 reasons that I'm getting to for my player pool. And with a sport like golf that is so variant and hard to predict from round to round, you shouldn't just be using the data from the day before and think that's going to give you the absolute nuts every single time. That's why we have the high upside players course history that you can find on that spreadsheet. I've got a whole event history tab on there so you can research every single player that was in the field this week. Also, the Poa putting tab that was on the very right side of that main page. You can check that out for everyone that's in the field. And then if you guys want to try out Bet the Number, this is something that is completely free, by the way, if you guys want to try this out. If you go to the round props tab, and by the way, their code Gsluke, if you're signing up, will give you that free trial that I'm talking about. But if you want to come on to Bet the Number, try this out, change this to the last 36 rounds, this could be a really good way to find some of those high upside golfers that I was talking about. And typically, this is something I'm using on the prop and the betting side as a tool to do research and to try and find guys that are in form for like an over on birdies or better. But you can use the same sort of thing and use it for this, right? Like, for example, Scotty's number 1. We mentioned it yesterday, though. Like, Garrett Kigo kind of stuck out, and he had a half decent today in Showdown. You had Patrick Rogers, he's top 3. Harry Hall, Sibu Kim, all these guys in like the top 5, top 10. maybe you use in that high upside category, in particular if they're a little bit lower owned. So if you want to try out Bet the Number, go to their website, use code Gsluke when you're signing up, and you'll get the free trial to try this out. And, you can go through the shots gained metrics. You can go through their course modeling, which is super useful. If you're a prop or a bettor of golf, they have a bunch of tools on there as well, which we're about to go through here together. But before we do that, I do want to go through any player pool deep dives that you guys have for me in the chat. But afterwards, we're going to go through the prop and the betting side. So that'll include prize picks, stuff on the PGA side, DP World Tour, which has already started. We could take a look at some of the early scoring there. And by the way, we had a commenter last night that mentioned the easier scoring. I ended up taking you up on that. I ended up taking some unders on strokes. Two of them, one of them hit, one of them did not end up hitting. But the scoring was easier than the first day, and that was a sharp take by whoever said that yesterday. But unfortunately, I forget the name of the individual that said that. But yeah, we're going to go through props here in just a moment together. But let's catch up on chat, get through those questions, and then get this thing going. Let's do the Theegala deep dive first. I did not forget about you, Scott. So Theegala, great course fit. He's played incredibly well at the TPC Scottsdale Stadium course. Today, though, was extremely short game dependent. So if you're looking for that to be repeatable from round to round, I have my skepticism that he's actually going to be able to pull that off. Now, does that mean that he's unplayable for round 3 showdown? Absolutely not. That's where these other 3 categories would come in. And because he's got such good course history, he's still somebody that you could conceivably end up using, even though he was in that top 10 of the ownership. And yeah, I believe he was in the top 10 of the ownership. If he wasn't, he was just outside of that top 10 at about 18 or 19%. So not my favorite play from the shots gained perspective, but there's still a time and place where you could get to it. Like you wouldn't be looking at the shots gained metrics as the reason for doing so if it makes sense. What's going on, Spizwolf? Welcome on in. Let's look at some Minwoo and some Homa for deep dives. Minwoo, one of my favorite players of the slate. We already kind of talked about it, but in round number 2, he gained ball striking and then lost putting. This is exactly what we're hoping to see. And he was a little around the green dependent, but remember, it's Chef Minwoo Lee, Mr. Chipinski himself. So I don't know if that's actually that much of an outlier for Minwoo. That's kind of just as regular. And then Max Homa, another good course history guy, by the way. So if you want to tail that for round 3, I could get behind it. Gained across all 4 categories. I wish it would have been a little bit sharper with this approach playing off the tee. Only gained about a half a stroke ball striking, but that's being nitpicky at that point. That's just us trying to find a reason to bitch. Like I'm sure a lot of you out there's wives try and do every Friday afternoon. Like they just got to try and find something to put to give you shit for, right? That's I guess understandable, but it's unfair to Max Homa, I'd say. Luke, what's up, man? Hope the day is going great. It is. Excited for moving day, though. It's going to be even better. I said top 25 in the $5 single entry. There you go. It's a pretty decent performance there. Patrick Reed's been printing for you too. Tons of stuff going your way recently, so you're thankful. It's the way to look at it, man. Gratitude breeds even more positivity and good results, and that's what I'm all about. I've been through my share of negative things in my life. This is not a venting sesh, but when you have a lot of positive going on too, it usually outweighs a lot of that negative. So I like your mindset, man. So yeah, we already went over that. Yeah, glad PGA back as well. We got a deep dive on Xander. Yeah, let's take a look at the stats. I don't think the stats really stood out too much, at least from what I can remember, but he gained ball striking and lost in the short game category. So this is like a 7 out of 10 shots gained profile. It's not super notable because he quote unquote only gained like 1.5 strokes ball striking because he quote unquote only lost 1 stroke around the green, but that still matters. That's why I'll give him the 7 out of 10. And the ownership's a lot lower than some of the other players around him. And that has to do with his score only being -1, just getting through the cut line. Whereas there's a lot of other guys there at the top that are playing well. So yeah, in GPPs, I think that makes sense. Yes. On Golf Channel, it was the 3 balls. That's good. Let's see. Let's do the deep dive on good old Jake Knapp. And yeah, pardon the pun there. I like Knapp because of his birdie or better upside. He was also solid ball striking today and into the negative between the around the green and the putting. You got to give him a 6.5, maybe a 7 out of 10 stat profile. Very similar to a few of the plays that we just went through. Yeah, I like him quite a bit, especially because he's averagely owned for the guys at the top end of the board. He's not closer to that 20% owned mark that you have with a lot of the other guys around him. Yeah, I like him and Ben Griffin a lot. If you guys saw my X/Twitter, I posted a screenshot, a little preview of the top end of the board. And those two are players that I'll be getting to quite a bit. Let's look at Nick Taylor, fantastic course history. Another guy that's played really well at TPC Scottsdale. And by the way, a lot of the course history guys made the cut this week. Coincidence? I think not. But he lost on approach. He gained off the tee. So about a neutral between the ball striking categories. Then he gained 2-stroke short game. This is a 3.5 out of 10 stat profile, but I'm still using him tomorrow because of that course history. So I think this is a beautiful example of where I kind of ignore the shots gained metrics at times. And I shouldn't say ignore. I use them for certain plays, and then I use other metrics to get to other plays. And that's still why I like a Nick Taylor tomorrow. And with the T25, the third, and then the win the last 3 years, it's pretty hard to pass it up at some point. Any good outright live value? I haven't taken a look myself, and I'm not a fan of just spitballing stuff from the hip, so I'll have to skip you on that one. If you maybe ask me on Twitter or something like that, I can get back to you, but won't be able to do it here. Could we do a Haotong dive? That was a major kick in the nuts. I guess it was a big kick in the nuts for you, but I don't know what you want from us in the chat, man. I guess you're just venting and whatnot, but yeah, I guess had that bad back nine, right? He was doing decently through his first 9. He had a good round number 1. And then I didn't even take a look at the scorecard because I wasn't impacted very much from that. But I'm assuming it probably didn't go very well if he missed the cut. So I hate to hear that for you, dude. What's going on? Illini says T37 are the -3 guys and the T28s are the -4s. Any edge for the first players out in round 3? Nope. If anything, it'd be the other way around. So we went over the weather before. Maybe you want to go back to like the first 5 minutes to get the full deep dive on it. But it actually looks calmer in the afternoon. So if anything, I'd want the guys going out a little bit later. You're going to look at Cam Young and Keith. Well, Cam Young played okay. He's out of contention, so he's not really helping you up top. But shots gained wise, if I could spell his name right, was it Cameron? Is that why it's not coming up? Yeah, I can't abbreviate the first name on Bet the Number. That's not going to work on any website. He gained in every category but around the green, most heavily with the putters, a bit of a red flag, but you still got to give him a 6 out of 10 for gaining what was about, I don't know, 1.3 strokes into the positive today. So yeah, 6 out of 10 there. Nothing that special though. Then you're looking at Keith Mitchell, good ball striker. Let's see how he did it today. Yeah, it was the ball striking. Gained 1.5 strokes between those and then lost 2 with the short game categories. I'll give him a 7 out of 10 stat profile. Wish it would have been, actually, let's take it down to a 6, just because I wish he would have had a little bit of better approach stats. Thoughts on a bounce back for Lamprecht? I don't know if you can really call it a bounce back for Lamprecht because he kind of sucks to begin with. The shots gained profile doesn't really give us that much optimism for that either, other than the fact that he could have been better in the short game categories. Here's the profile on Lamprecht. If you guys aren't familiar with his game, unbelievably volatile player from the Korn Ferry Tour. A lot of the guys that got their cards didn't miss cuts on the Korn Ferry. Lamprecht missed quite a few cuts on the Korn Ferry Tour. He, even when he made some cuts, he'd finish like T50, T65, but he also had a lot of top 5 finishes and top 3 finishes to get onto the tour. So if you're okay with that volatility, I guess Showdown would kind of be the place for it. Yeah, these shots gained metrics, by the way, even though they look terrible, they actually wouldn't talk me off of a Lamprecht whatsoever. If you were just looking for like a low-owned flyer play with upside at the bottom end of the board, because like he's so volatile, he's such a loose cannon that the round stats from the day before aren't going to help you that much very often with him. So yeah, I'm not going to talk you off the ledge. If you're considering him for the large LGPPs, just don't do it in cash or single entries. That's just getting too cute. There's just better plays you could probably use at the bottom. You've got Goddard, Cootie, Fitzpatrick, and Young to finish top 10. Are you cooked? Absolutely not with the first 3. I mean, the first 3 are already in the top 10, so you're good there. And then you've got Young. If it's a parlay, you might be cooked, but yeah, 3 of those 4 look absolutely fine right now. You're deep diving on Shipley. You already went through the metrics before. Good ball striking, lost putting. Did the exact same thing the first day, so I'd have to give him a 7 out of 10 again. You bet it Thursday at plus 5,000, and now it's plus 2240, but Young is 3 shots back. Oh, you're talking about with the parlay? Yeah, so you're not cooked on that. Yeah, 3 shots back, and the other 3 are already within there. That's exactly where you want to be. And he said it's only plus 2240 now. I feel like that's like a decent odds to bet with the kind of situation that you're in, man. I don't think you're cooked at all. Thoughts on Cootie? Unfortunately, going to be the highest owned player on the slate, at least per my projections, and was a little bit putting dependent, but it's a little putting dependent. He still gained ball striking. 2 strokes into the positive isn't like he gained 4 or 5 strokes either. And then in round 1, it was similar, except that he was a little bit more ball striking heavy than he was today. I'll give him a 6 out of 10. I was going to say like a 5 out of 10, but that's being unfair. He's played fantastic golf. Any Patrick Reed looks for the round? I think he'll probably play well again. I don't even know what they have the board at yet, so I don't want to fire from the hip and just give you something randomly. If you have any questions about props, though, I'll be able to give you some advice on that. Thoughts on McNeely tomorrow? Can he charge up the leaderboard? He's in 10th place, so I'm not sure if he has that much room to actually charge up the board, right? There's only 9 players ahead of him that he can pass up. Do I think he can have a solid round number 3, though? Yeah, absolutely. He's got some of the best course history of anyone in the field, 2 top 9 finishes in a row. Ball striking stats, you can see it on there. He gained across both of those categories, was slightly into the positive in the short game. So he didn't carry himself there, yet he was still solid in all 4 categories. That's a 7, even an 8 out of 10 shots gained profile. So yeah, I wouldn't say charge up the board, but he's definitely setting up well. Cam Young has scrambled awesome, but has been starting poor. He bogeyed the first 2 holes both days. I didn't notice that, but you're right. I noticed it day 1 now that you mention it. And then today, I wasn't paying that much attention to his card, to be honest. But yeah, if that's the case, then just clean it up, make 5 or 6 birdies, and you could shoot -5, -6. Maybe one of those is an eagle rather than a birdie or better, and it gets you the 50 to 60 points that we're hoping for. So I think it's a decent shot. And yeah, he's at 69.5 and 4.5 birdies. We'll take a look at the prop side there in just a minute. We'll come back to your question after we take a look at the DP World Tour weather report. And I want to see what the early scoring looks like. I believe the round should have started a little bit ago. Maybe it's starting any moment now. I want to see what the first couple groups out are doing on that side too. Let's go through some props and betting now. So if you're here for DFS, best of luck on that side of things. Of course, guys, all my projections and player poll can be found on my Patreon page via the Golf DFS tier. Link in the description for that. But I've already got a few slips entered for tomorrow's action, and I think there's a lot of value for the waste management side. So we're going to start with that. Then I'm going to go back to some of that DP World Tour stuff and some live golf stuff later on, because I know we had some questions on that too. But Phoenix Open is where I see some value immediately and where I wanted to jump on a few spots. But the scoring average improved compared to round number 1. That was because of the winds not being as much of a factor. And I'm just going to go right to the weather forecast because I want to be able to adjust with what we see there on the averages. Tomorrow, it's going to be even easier. Not only do you have lower winds in the afternoon, not nearly as gusty of conditions on this kind of a forecast. And by the way, just for completion's sake, NEM calling for the same thing, GFS, even calmer weather, ECM model, extremely calm weather for tomorrow too. I think we're going to see at least a -1 scoring average, if not close to -2 from the field. The moving day setup too. We're not going to go through every single pin location here together as it's a little bit late. Also, I did not get much sleep last night, so I'm trying to keep this live stream a lot quicker than what we've had for the last few days. I still want to touch on everything, but maybe just a little bit more concise than what we've done over those last couple live streams. These pin locations, though, are a little bit softer than what you had for round 2. And I already talked about it on yesterday's live stream that there were some hard pins. Like 8, for example, was in the very back. 14 was a back pin location. That was a lot harder to access. Now they're in the front. I think you're going to see the bogey rate drop quite a bit on those holes. So that's part of the reason why. I think the scoring could get to like -1.5 or even -2. But also, holes like 17 are at the easiest possible pin location. A few of the other par 5s are easily attackable. Like 3 is the easiest pin location that you get at that hole. It's on the bottom shelf in the back corner. So you have a little bit more room to attack it into. That's why I think you're going to see these improve. So birdie average, I think, is going to go up to like 4.5 per round. Pretty drastic increase, like a half per round. It's not just the pins, it's not just the wind, but it's also the field strength being better after the cut line. I think the bogey average might not move as much. I think it'll probably go down to like 2.5 to 2.75 per round, though. So I guess I shouldn't say that. It'll probably move just as much as the birdie average. Now that I think about it, fairway average was 7.5 round 1. It was 8 today. That one will probably stay in that 7.5 to 8 range. Maybe it goes slightly up just because of the cut line. But that one would be probably the smallest change out of all these different categories. And then the green and regulation average, just like the other categories, I think it's going to get easier. And unlike fairways, I think we're going to see a little bit more of an impact here to at least a 12.5 per round average. And when you add that all together, there's going to be a lot of positive stance plays that make sense. So let's just actually go ahead and hop on into those. So I guess I just leaked a couple of those on there, but that's totally fine. We're going to go through them together anyways, but I just want to get too far ahead of ourselves with showing those. But let's go through these two together. So it's going to be a Chris Goddard over at 4.5, and then a Matt McNeely for the over at 4.5 too. And there's something going on with these payouts because it should not pay 2.8x. But when we scroll down here, you'll see that it's paying more than, for example, if we took a Goddard out. Goddard up's the prop that changes it. But if we took just like 2 regular overs on birdies or better, it's 2.7x. So riddle me this. With a Goblin prop, which is supposed to be an easier than a 50% hit rate, right? They lower the payouts. We'll put that in quotes. They lower the payouts, right, on these Goblin props. Well, then tell me why I'm getting a higher payout now when I'm using the Goblin prop. So, hey, if they're going to make a mistake and they're going to hand us extra EV for free, then I'm going to take it. I'm not going to pass that up. And if I think the average for birdies is going to be 4.5 per round, Chris Grotto, an elite tier player in this field, he struggled putting today. That's why he didn't generate as much birdie production as he did the first day. Is somebody that I'll smack for that all day, especially with a higher payout. Then on the other side of this, we have a Matt McNeely for the over at 4.5. Elite tier course history, top 9 finishes the last couple years. And today, he only had 3 birdies or better, but his putter was ice cold. He was making a lot of par putts if you go hole by hole. But of his 3 birdies, 2 of them were par 5s that he reached into, and then he 2-putted that. So it's not like he was even making a putt, right, to get the birdie to drop. And then another one was a dart that he hit to like 6 feet, and then he ended up making that. I would expect him to be able to take advantage of 17 more. He wasn't able to birdie that today. Some of the other par 5s, too. He only birdied 2 out of the 3 of them. He's a little bit of extra room there. Gets maybe a 10 to 15 footer to drop like he normally does. And by the way, the reason why I think that's very reasonable to assume from a Matt McNeely is he's one of the best putters on tour in the world. So for him to have not made anything from 10 to 25 feet today is completely unheard of. It does not happen for him over 18 holes, hardly ever on tour. So I'll take that kind of a bounce back. And it's the same thing as this Chris Goddard prop. An elite tier player, if I think the average is going to get close to 4.5 birdies or better per round, should not be at that sort of a number. And we don't have any sportsbook lines to compare to. It's also why we're not going to have the matchups to go through here together. We don't have tee times yet. We don't have them exactly set, so the sportsbooks aren't going to be able to post those. But it also means that books like Prize Picks here are in the dark. They don't have those odds to rely on. And I personally prefer these situations where they don't have the odds. That's Prize Picks Underdog now I'm talking about, to compare to post their own boards, because a lot of their lines makers, I know some of the Prize Picks line makers. I was friends with them before we ended up not getting along so well because I was taking money from them and talking shit because they were bumping props from mine. But I know that they like to enjoy themselves on the weekend. So I noticed as soon as the round ended, within like 30 minutes, they got this board up. It's probably because they had some stuff to do tonight out there with some buddies of theirs. So we're going to take advantage of that, right? If they post a board that's mispriced, that has these multipliers incorrectly, then screw them. We'll make it count on our end. So that'll be the first one that we enter on those two. I think a no-brainer. And then I was looking at some of these other categories, and even though we didn't have the odds, a lot of times they'd only post like strokes or birdies, which kind of sucks in this scenario. Not the case here. They gave us every single category, and there's some misprices here as well. So let's go through the one misprice I have for fairways so far, and that's going to be this Viktor Hovland over on fairways. He's at 7.5. The average today was about 8 per round, and I actually think that might go up a little bit with the cut line action. So maybe that's like 8.1, maybe like 8.2 per round at the most positive. Viktor Hovland, if you take a look at the stats from this year, we'll do that. Let's go to driving accuracy. And then bring up McNeely. Sorry, why am I thinking about McNeely still from the last slip? Let's find Viktor Hovland. I also have to change it to 2025 so we can look at last year's stats. 2026 isn't mature enough for us to be looking at those kind of stats, but he was number 58 on tour, well above average in driving accuracy. And even more detailed than that, if you take a look at his last 10 worldwide starts, he's gained accuracy in 8 of those last 10 starts. So 80% of the time, he's been gaining like 5 to 10% accuracy to the field. At 7.5, below today's field average, that is an absolute no-brainer to take for the over. Then I also took an over on greens regulation on Hideki Matsuyama. The average, I think, is going to go up to like 12.5 per round. It was 12.28 per round today. The cut line, the lower winds, all of that is going to make things easier. Also, the moving day setup being a little bit easier than what you had for today. They might even move up a par 3 tee box or 2 to try and make that a little bit more accessible. You shouldn't have Hideki Matsuyama at that same number. He's been an elite tier iron player in 2026, one of the best players form-wise, period, to start this season. And at 12.5, I'm expecting when we get the tee times tomorrow and we get those sportsbook lines to compare to, that this is going to be massive value towards the over. So both of those slips, I think, are going to be plus EV by the time we get those tomorrow. And I think there's probably a lot of other pieces of value that we can attack for PGA as well. But I am going to leave it at that for the live stream, as I have to keep some of my bets behind the paywall for my Patreon members. But 4 props is a pretty good sweat for you guys to tail as a community out there yourselves. But if you want every single piece of exposure that I'm going for on the PGA side tomorrow, make sure to check out my Patreon page for that. Not only do you get access to every single slip as I'm entering those are already posted on my Patreon page before we got on the live stream here, but you also get the stat averages, weather reports for all these different events, That's not just PGA, but also the DP World Tour, which we're about to talk through here together here in a second. Also Live Golf Redaya, which was really good for us on the first day we played it. It was just okay today with our ROI. Should have been better. I mean, look at the scoring average at the bottom, guys. Minus 3.47. It was a little bit windier, but it rained and softened up the golf course. And I nuked unders on strokes and overs on birdies. They just had it completely mispriced. They thought it was going to play harder than the first couple of days, and it actually played way easier than it did the first couple of days. But who was it that didn't get the memo? Victor Perez sucked a big one. That sucked. And he's such a good player, consistent player too. I really did not assume that was going to happen. Who was the other one? I think that might have been it. It was really mostly Victor Perez that ended up sucking the bed today. So, yeah, we'll see if we can take advantage of that a little bit more tomorrow. That was, I'm still salty about that because that would have been another whole 3x or cashing out on top of that. What I'm going to do next, though, let's go over any questions or bets that you guys want me to deep dive in chat. And I also want to see if this scoring has come in for the DP World Tour. So it looks like the round just started, so we don't have a lot of data on that side yet. So I'm probably not going to enter anything here on live stream for the DP World Tour. But here's what I'm going to do for round 3. I'll be looking at these stats. Looks like hole 3. It's a long par 3. It's playing way over par, but only one group has gone through that. So we can't really learn anything from the setup quite yet. Hole 1 is a reachable par 5, and that's actually playing over par so far. Played under par, under par the first couple days. It's looking like scoring might be a little bit harder than the first couple rounds, but the weather should be perfect. I would not really expect that to be the case. So this is probably just the case of the first group out kind of struggling, maybe in some lower temperatures compared to what they're going to have in the afternoon. So I'm going to have to wait an hour, maybe even 2 hours before entering anything on the DP World Tour side so we can see what the course conditions look like. And the reason for that, by the way, is DP World Tour is not my main site that I bet, not the main tournament or league that I really know about. And we focus on the PGA Tour. It's what I watch all day. I look through the analytics. I'm going to be much better at that. So I try and lean into really big advantages and really big edges that we have on sites like the DP World Tour and Live Tour. So I'm going to stay away from that one for now, but you can see the averages in the middle was easier than round 1. And with the weather forecast, just to show that it was on Data Golf that you're seeing this weather forecast, if it's only going to be sub 5 miles an hour for most of the day, the scoring's probably at least -1 to -1.5. So I know you had the question before about Patrick Reed, right? That was the 69.5. Then you were also looking at 4.5 birdies. I'd prefer, if you're going to take one of those, the 69.5, because if I think the scoring average can be -1 to -2, maybe that'd be the range I give on it. Gaining 2 or just a stroke to the field to cover that kind of a line is extremely reasonable with the kind of form that he's posted. I mean, he won last week. His first round leader this week is up there at the top again after 36 holes. You're not going to find a better player from that perspective. So not going to give you too much pushback on that one. Do it like Scotty to shoot another 65 or 66. Yeah, I'm playing him in Showdown, so that probably answers that for you. So it sounds good. Always appreciate the insight. I got you. And hopefully that extra insight I just gave you there helps you out even more on that. I would wait, though. If you have the ability to wait, at least wait an extra hour or two, check and actually make sure that the scoring is going to play easier. And if so, I would nuke that. What's going on, Antonio? Welcome on in. Nothing crazy in the cup tonight, unfortunately. Just some water. I'm tired, like I said, so I'm just going to avoid doing any of the crazy stuff tonight. What is my favorite play in the $7,200 range for Showdown? I don't do favorite plays, Patty, so if you have a couple players you want to run by me, I'll do that, but yeah, not something that we do on this live stream. It's not a picks and plays sort of video or stream. This is a much more processed based, so let me know if there's anyone you want me to deep dive. It's a great call on the Bud over. Yeah, we lucked out on that one, so I appreciate you saying that it was a great call, but we definitely lucked out on that. So, hey, we'll take the units regardless, whether it was a great call or us getting lucky. He said, good luck in my round 3 Showdown, and thanks for my insights. Likewise to you, man. Anyone find the round 3 tee times? They haven't finished round 2 yet, so they aren't going to be out. You're playing Xander for the under 5 birdies thoughts. So 5 birdies is a little bit different than these guys at 4.5, but I don't like that personally. I think the average is going to be about 4.5 per round. Xander, a well above average player. So I don't think 5 is that far off from where he should be. But with the winds dying down, him being such a top level player, I think I'd rather lean towards the over than the under, if anything. So yeah, it's not a terrible play, but not one that I can co-sign, to be honest. Thoughts on Mav and Cootie at 13 greens? So I like Tadeki a little bit more because he's at 12. The guys that are at 13 have to hit 14 or more to cover it. And that's possible, but that's going to be gaining likely 1.5 greens regulation to the field. So it's a lot more of an ask for somebody like a Cootie. Who was the other one you were looking at, right? It was Cootie and then a Mav McNeely at 13. Yeah, I'd probably stay away from those, man. I actually think that those are accurate projections. Hideki is a better iron player than those two. So the fact that Hideki's 0.5 lower is, I think, why it's such a big misprice. Those guys being at 13 kind of makes sense to me. Got her up Eagle 13 both days. Yeah, he's a stud. And 13, I mean, it's an easier par 5, but it's still very impressive to be able to do that. A lot of people eagled 13 today, though. It was an extremely accessible pin on that right side. English or Griffin for tomorrow's showdown? I'd say I prefer Griffin on that one. And yeah, I'll answer questions like that, by the way. But if you're asking me to just like pick out the nuts at $7,200, I won't do that. Griffin had a double bogey in round 1, or he would have been priced differently how he settled in since then. Agreed. And that was due to a cactus. That can be, negative variance that's working against you. So I'm totally co-signing that. He's one of my favorite plays for tomorrow. Looking at Neiman and Ortiz, you'll have to let me know what you're curious about with those. What sort of market, or maybe if you're playing them in DFS. Is it Patrick Reed's going for the top 10 OWGR? That's absolutely correct. And we haven't gone to spring yet. He's also going for getting his PGA Tour card already. And I think if he wins, he's not guaranteed his tour card, but the simulations have it at like a 99.9% chance of him getting his tour card if he wins this week. So he's a very motivated individual. Like you give him a rabbit to chase and he's going to do very well. You put him on live where it doesn't matter though, and he sucks. So it's I think he's making the right move. I don't think everyone should come back from live. Patrick Reed's one of the few that I think is really going to benefit from it. So Michael Kim is super interesting. He gained a whole bunch of strokes putting today, so I personally don't see it. I would expect him to come back down to earth a little bit after gaining 4.8 strokes, like you can see there on the right side. Say good luck, everyone, too. You got to go. Best of luck in everything that you're going with. You want to take Siwoo Kim for the over at 9.5 fairways. Ooh, that's a steep line, but the number is so high. Yeah, I agree with you on that. Even though he's good at hitting fairways. Yeah, that's the thing, man. Like elite tier players like a Siwoo hitting fairways. Scotty, for example, he's 14.5 greens. You want to take their over because they're the best players in the world at that category, but oftentimes it's a very big ask to hit 10 of your 14 fairways or to hit 15 of your 18 greens regulation. You only have 3 misses to work with. You can still be playable, especially if course conditions are going to lean into it. But I prefer if you can find guys closer to the average that are not average players. Like Hideki, prime example of that. Hovland, prime example of that. Above average players in their respective categories that are priced about the field average. So yeah, I agree with you on that sentiment across the board. Looking at Cootie at the over at 4.5. Yeah, he's a good birdie maker. So if we take a look at the stats from last year, he's one of the top players regardless, whether they're playing in this field or not, I should say. So Cootie last year, got to change it to 2025 so we can get what we're looking for. But Cootie was number 4. He did play a very soft strength schedule. He also played in altered events, some of the easier golf courses, and that had a lot to do with it. But if I think the average is going to be about 4.5 birdies, then he'd have to be somebody that you're projecting over too. So yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. Not sure I'll play it personally, but it'll be at least in the shopping cart at some point tonight. Appreciate the insight as always. Thank you, Antonio, for that. Keith Mitchell, top tier birdie maker over 4.5. He's another one, right? The only thing I'm going to say about the 4.5s though, is that the payouts shouldn't be like this. But you could take Hideki and get 2.8x. You can take a Siwoo Kim and get 2.8x. I'd rather do that. Like at least if you can play on Prize Picks. I guess not everyone out there is going to have access to Prize Picks. I really like these elite tier guys that they fucked up with the pricing. And just know when they figure out what they did wrong, they're going to fix it, right? But because I kind of know these lines makers and what they're likely doing right now, it's still going to be good for at least a couple more hours. So take advantage of those while you can. Would have loved to see Patrick Reed on the Ryder Cup team last year, but oh well. Yeah, I was one of the people that mentioned that too. I don't think he did enough to earn his way onto the team. It was the Open Championship where it was like his last chance to try and earn a spot, and he missed the cut. So he probably should have made the cut and contended there if he wanted to make the team, is what I think. For when I get there, did I play Reed over 4.5 birdies? Or you did, you said. But if I think the 69.5 is good too, you'll mix that in with some slips. Yeah, I'd actually prefer the 69.5 if I was going to be honest with you, man. And I want to take a look at that board too. I know we mentioned the Patrick Reed stuff, but let's look at a few of the other ones real quickly. We're not going to enter anything now. I do want to wait to see those averages, but I at least want to see where they have some of these guys. Keep in mind that it is a par 72. And one that immediately stands out to me that might actually be playable right this second is this Ayora under. Ayora is arguably the best player in this field. Shaper Reed would be 1 and 2 in most people's book. But if you ask me who the most talented player in the field is, maybe not the most accomplished, it's Angel Ayora here. Kid is a ball striker. He can shape it in both directions. He's long. He's a good putter. He's got a good short game. Really does not have a weakness. And you don't find that very often from young up-and-coming prospects, especially on the DP World Tour. So if I think the average, we're going to have to see. I'm going to wait at least an hour again to see what's happening there. But if it's looking like scoring is going to be in that -1 to -1.5 range, asking Ayora to gain a half a stroke, let's say like to a 1.5 scoring average under par, is very reasonable. In fact, that's like disrespectful to only ask him to gain a half a stroke to the field. So I'll be side-eyeing that one. Not sure we're going to enter it right this second. And then birdies are better. The average was what? It was 3.64 per round. That likely goes up with the slightly lower winds and also the cut line to maybe even about 4 per round. So if you could find an elite tier birdie maker for it, might make sense. But there are no elite tier birdie makers that they have on this prize picks board. So yeah, that's the DP World Tour thoughts, I would say. And let's look at the Live Tour as well. You might actually enter something on Live just because the conditions there should be a little bit more predictable. And let's go to Radaya. Let's do that. What? Riyadh is, I guess, actually how you pronounce it. I sound like a complete idiot with what I just said. Completely ignore that. Let's go to GFS, though, and then go to Saturday night, Sunday night. I don't even know what to say. It's in the middle of the night over there in the Middle East. It looks a little less windy than today, but windier than rounds 1 and 2. And unlike today where it rained, the course was a lot softer. It doesn't look like that's going to be a factor for tomorrow. So I would say the scoring average likely gets a little harder, especially because the course is going to dry out overnight with some of the winds that they have right now. So at the bottom, you can see the scoring average. Days 1 and 2, it was -2 and then like -2.1. Birdie average was 3.9 and then 4.1 per round the first couple of days. It jumped up way up to 4.9 per round last night. It's going to probably go back down to like maybe 4.5 per round at most. I think closer to the round 1 and 2 average of like 4 per round is a little bit more reasonable. And then with the scoring average aspect, I think that that's also probably going to go back to like -2. And when you take a look at the board for Live, it's unfortunate. They finally figured it out. It took them 3 whole rounds to get this board even remotely priced correctly. But they finally have guys at like -3. Sorry, -3.5 even, like Atomic Kid in there. Carlos Ortiz is at -3. And if I think the scoring average is going to be at -2, then they did a pretty good job with the pricing on here. And I guess that's not to say that you can't find value in a few cases. I'm going to try and do so when I go through this board, but it's nowhere near what we had the last couple of days where I was like, oh, wow, obvious value. Oh, wow, obvious value, and just went and nuked them all. This looks like maybe there's even some fade value that we can enter compared to days 1 and 2 where I was just going all positive stance plays. And that's it for the stroke side. We'll look at the birdie or better board as well. We had some 3.5s like Munoz that we took advantage of yesterday. We, of course, cashed on that with our exposure here together, but now he's at 4.5. A Joaquin Neiman that we got at 4 birdies is now up to 5 birdies or better. And if I think scoring is going to get a little harder, I don't think there's a whole lot of value on this board. Like these 4.5s, I took an over at 4.5 today, and it was Bryson DeChambeau, the best birdie maker. Maybe not the best or the second best birdie maker that you have on that side of things. Now it's Jose Luis Pallister that we have at 4.5, a middle to or lower tier player on the Live Tour. It's just not the same. So I might actually not even enter stuff for Live tomorrow. Like I think that this pricing is probably exactly where I would have it, if not even a little bit too optimistic. So if there's a fade value or two I can find, I'll probably mix that in. Same thing for Eurogolf. We're going to be monitoring that situation over the next hour or so and then trying to find some stuff to enter. But that's all I've got for the live stream, guys. That's going to be it as it's getting a little bit late over here on the East Coast. I'm going to catch up on some sleep, be able to attack the boards in the morning when we get those matchups to attack. And unfortunately, not going to be able to go through any head-to-heads here together as we don't have the tee times and the boards available on the sportsbooks quite yet. But tomorrow morning, I will be deep diving those. And if you guys follow me on X/Twitter, I'll try and put something out over there from that detail too, because as you guys know, I like to put out some community details for us to all get some skin in the game together. You have those with the 2 prize pick slips that we've already entered. If you guys want to tell everything else that I'm entering on prize picks or underdog, you guys can do that over there on the Patreon page. Link in the description of the video to do so. It is the golf prop and betting tier where you guys can get access to all of that. But the props, the bets and the matchups tomorrow morning, I'll also be posting those for my Patreon members. But I'm going to make sure we can get some beauty sleep, get the noggin working 100% tomorrow morning to get after all of that. Best of luck, guys. I was saying there before, guys, and let's have ourselves a moving day.